Brand new polling showing former President Trump pulling ahead of Vice President Kamala Harris.
Is she too liberal or progressive? This is amongst likely voters. 47% said yes.
Wow, one so-so poll and apparently the world is over. So I'm going to get to this New York Times Siena poll, which is causing a lot of conversation right now in the Harris-Trump campaigns, because it apparently means Kamala Harris, the campaign's over, they're done, they're going to lose. I'm going to show you what the poll shows, but also the lessons to be learned here, because this is the important piece, is first not to just assume this is the end of the race, because the results of this poll are not that dramatic, but also to ensure here the campaign does not learn the wrong lessons from this result. So this is the New York Times Siena College poll. So this is basically the one poll that a lot of journalists hold up as like the most important poll, or I should say polling outlet when it comes to these polls. So Kamala Harris is down nationally by 1 percentage point. Worth noting, it's within the margin of error, which is 3%. So regardless, she's down. I don't often mention the margin of error when I'm discussing polls, because of course there's a margin of error. But the whole point is the averages here, like who is out on top, regardless of that margin of error. But okay, she's down, right? Terrifying. Worth noting, she's still up nationally in polling average. So this is from 538. Real Clear Politics also has her over Trump in their national average as well. Taking a look here at the state by state polling, Harris is up. It's still, let's be clear, it is insane that the race is even this close at all. It was insane back in 2020. I'm no big fan of Joe Biden. Clearly, Donald Trump should not have been president again. The fact that it was close back then is insane. The fact that it's close now is insane. Look, there is a deeper conversation here about the complete failure of media to properly educate people. The fact that now people are in their own silos. Facebook has done a number on people's brains. So there are a variety of factors here that have resulted in the fact that at least half of the voting base have lost their minds. But still, Kamala Harris is generally up or tied in these swing state polls. Okay, but this is where we get to the analysis portion and the lessons to be learned here. So, also in their polling, more than 60% of likely voters said the next president should represent a major change from Mr. Biden, but only 25% said the vice president represented that change, while 53% said Mr. Trump, the former president, did. All right, so it's important to be clear as well. What kind of change, right? Because change can mean, do you want more fascist? Okay, Donald Trump, I guess you want him. Do you want somebody who's more left-leaning than Biden? Then Kamala Harris should be, chasing after that vote. So there are different, these very open-ended questions I don't take a lot from, but it is worth noting that people do want change. This is where we get to this here. New York Times, man. And it's not just New York Times. This is like the general consensus, how they report things. Another warning sign for Democrats, 47% of likely voters viewed Ms. Harris as too liberal, compared with 32% who saw Mr. Trump as too conservative. I've been discussing this for years. I cannot stand polling that is the choices are liberal or conservative. Because what do those labels mean? They mean different things to different people. So some may look at this and think, oh, Kamala Harris is too liberal. Her policies are being too generous to the working class. But you take a look at other polling, look at what policies are actually popular, and not just Data for Progress. This is one polling out. Look anywhere. Progressive policy is the most popular policy. Examples here. Voters think addressing corporate price gouging, cracking down on junk fees, and capping drug costs would be most effective at lowering prices. The Kamala Harris campaign is addressing a variety of these things. Passing a law to prevent corporate price gouging. Kamala Harris, that's in her campaign plan. Banning companies from charging hidden or misleading fees, again, in the campaign. Capping out-of-pocket costs for pharmaceutical drugs such as insulin. The Biden campaign has already capped the cost of insulin. So these are popular policies. You look at something like this, oh, Harris should be running away from these popular policies. No, she should be running toward them. Again, what do you mean by liberal and what do you mean by conservative? Because oftentimes people attribute things that are not conservative or not liberal to those various labels. Look at what is not popular here. Imposing new higher tariffs on imported goods. This is one of the only policies Trump has actually espoused is tariffs. Cutting taxes for wealthy Americans. Again, this is what Trump wants to do. These are the few things in his plan are the least popular things. Cutting taxes on large corporations. Again, that's part of the Trump plan. So Harris, even though she's apparently viewed as too liberal, and they're intimating here that she should be more conservative, she should not be more conservative on economic policy because those are incredibly unpopular policies. Another example, 85% of, so this is a poll from last year. 85% of voters in battleground states, important to note here, favor paid parental, family, and medical leave. 85% of voters. So that breaks down to 96% of Democrats, 82% of independents, and 76% of Republicans. 96% of young voters of color favored, as did 84% of suburban women. An incredibly popular policy. Something that Tim Walz actually passed in his state. A policy like this should be front and center for the Kamala Harris campaign. Now, it may be viewed by the New York Times as, oh, it's too liberal. But look at how popular that policy is. It would be stupid not to embrace this. Now, let me show you two examples of recent ads that they've put out, the Harris campaign. One, I think, is, look, there are two different strategies. So let me play the first one, and then I'll get to the other strategy or ad that they have released.
In 2016, Donald Trump said he would choose only the best people to work in his White House. Now those people have a warning for America. Trump is not fit to be president again. Here's his vice president.
Anyone who puts himself over the Constitution should never be president of the United States. It should come as no surprise that I will not be endorsing Donald Trump this year.
His defense secretary.
Do you think Trump can be trusted with the nation's secrets ever again?
No. I mean, it's just irresponsible action that places our service members at risk, places our nation's security at risk.
His national security advisor.
Donald Trump will cause a lot of damage. The only thing he cares about is Donald Trump.
And the nation's highest-ranking military officer.
We don't take an oath to a king or a queen or to a tyrant or a dictator. And we don't take an oath to a wannabe dictator.
Take it from the people who knew him best. Donald Trump is a danger to our troops and our democracy. We can't let him lead our country again.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
All right, so I'm a little mixed on this strategy because it's possible that this does reach some voters, maybe voters in Arizona who typically lean, who are, one of the states that you apparently can actually find Republicans who are more moderate. There are not many of those voters because that typically just means, at least as it applies to politicians, moderate just means more corporate. But there are voters that view themselves as Republicans who don't like Trump. An ad like that may help that. But it's also worth noting those individuals in that ad who no longer support Trump, or I should say aren't endorsing him at least, support his policies, continue to support conservative policy, are not people that you want to align yourself with because they are not good people, despite their hatred of Trump, which is correct. They're still not good people. And they are not people that you want to be associated with your campaign in terms of policy. So there is a potential to also damage your campaign if you move too closely to these never Trump Republicans, which, again, before I get to the other ad, which I think is a better example of what they're doing in their campaign, or I should say what they should be doing in their campaign, there is, Liz Cheney, who came out to endorse Kamala Harris. So I'm going to play a bit of this and then just show you who, look, I just want to be clear. You can't stop people from endorsing you. And I'm not sure you should. There's no real control the campaign has over this. But it's important that the Harris campaign does not embrace Liz Cheney. Allow this to exist. And for the people that this impacts in a positive way, okay, let it impact them. But don't embrace these Republicans. Because what Liz Cheney was saying about Kamala Harris and Democrats just a few years ago is completely insane. And it goes to show just how fake all these Republican politicians are. But first, here are her comments on supporting Kamala Harris this time.
I've never voted for a Democrat.
Wow.
And it tells you, I think, the stakes in this election. Donald Trump presents a challenge and a threat fundamentally to the Republic. We see it on a daily basis. Somebody who was willing to use violence in order to attempt to seize power, to stay in power. Someone who represents unrecoverable catastrophe, frankly, in my view. And we have to do everything possible to ensure that he doesn't, that he's not reelected. Given how close this race is, in my view, again, it's not enough. You have many Republicans out there who are saying, well, we're not going to vote for him, but we will write someone else in.
Right.
And I think that this time around, that's not enough. That it's important to actually cast a vote for Vice President Harris.
All right. It's important to note here, Liz Cheney is no longer a Republican politician. She lost her seat in the House. Liz Cheney is now free to do what she is doing here. I shouldn't just say free. She is incentivized to continue being an anti-Trump Republican. That is what gets her on television in these sorts of interviews. It benefits her career to do that. How she actually feels, who the hell knows? Because she has been all over the map. I tend to think she actually does hate Trump because even Republicans, you've heard countless reports that they can't stand him, but they support him because they want to keep their positions. Liz Cheney's out, doesn't have to do that anymore. So she is doing this. Now, again, the Harris campaign can't stop this from happening. I'm not sure you would want to, but it's important that they don't embrace her. They don't want to turn off the potential Democratic voter base that they have, especially when it comes to young people that care about human rights, care about foreign policy. Embracing someone like Liz Cheney, who is insane on those issues, has a history of being completely insane on foreign policy, it would be a detriment to the Harris campaign to embrace Liz Cheney. And, it's worth noting, giving some context here. Liz Cheney is not the same moderate maverick Republican who is breaking with her party on policy. She's a right-wing warmonger whose crude attacks on people of color, immigrants, Muslims, and progressives carry the same venom as those of the most extreme members of her caucus and of Trump, whose election 2016 and re-election 2020 she enthusiastically supported. Yes, in case you forgot, Liz Cheney enthusiastically supported Trump's re-election. Here is a clip from one of her many appearances back then on Fox News.
Look, the Bernie Sanders, AOC, Joe Biden, they are advocating the quicksand of socialism. They will absolutely sink and devastate this nation. And they talk about giving power to the people. Kamala Harris's slogan of "for the people." Every time I hear that, I remember what they actually are doing is taking power from the people and giving it to the government. They're taking freedom. Socialism doesn't work. It has never worked. It will drive this nation into the ground. And it's crucially important that we don't give them the opportunity to do that this fall.
Look at that insane fear-mongering. And now, got to vote for Harris, which I agree. But coming from you, this is not the right messenger. Again, you can't control what she is saying now. I think you could argue maybe it's even helping Harris in some way for her to do this. But the campaign should not embrace her. More context here. Cheney also accused Harris of supporting infanticide, announcing on national television after Biden had selected the California senator as his running mate that Harris backed, quote, abortion up until the 9th month and beyond. This is insane Trump crap. Cheney then proceeded to dismiss Harris's qualifications as a former elected prosecutor, state attorney general, and U.S. senator by claiming that Joe Biden clearly decided that he was going to make a choice based on somebody's gender, based on their race, and based on his need to placate the very far socialist left of his party. Let me give you an example now of what I want to see more from. That was a weird phrasing of the sentence. Let me show you a campaign ad from Kamala Harris that I hope they do more of.
We all know costs are too high, but while corporations are gouging families, Trump is focused on giving them tax cuts. But Kamala Harris is focused on you.
Building up the middle class will be a defining goal of my presidency.
She'll make groceries more affordable by cracking down on price gouging. And she'll cut housing costs by taking on corporate speculators. Middle-class families build America. We need a leader who has their back.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
All right. Much, much better. Showcasing Trump as the pro-corporate candidate, discussing with some specifics there what Kamala Harris is going to do to address the cost of living. This is a much better strategy. Not embracing Republican politicians or conservatives, but instead embracing a real message of hope and being specific on how the campaign or how the presidency will help people. Also worth noting here, so the Harris Walls campaign have released a platform online, and something they've done here that I was, I wouldn't say impressed, but glad to see, is they include Trump's agenda as a contrast for each section. So you can go through what they support and then look up what Trump's agenda is. This, I'm sure a campaign has done this in the past. I can't think of one, but it's such a good idea that I'd be surprised if it hasn't been done before. But this is a good way to showcase, hey, here's what I'm about versus here's what my opponent wants to do. So in every section, doing it. Great. Good to see that. I haven't had the time to, go deep on each of these issues here. But I just hope the Harris campaign does not learn the wrong lessons from this one New York Times poll and the idea that she's too liberal. Because when you look at the actual policies, the vast majority of people support and want to see more progressive policy.